It's time to head out to our French correspondent, Liam Duffy, who's out there in the south of France now. I've had it on good authority that the weather has not quite warmed up out there like we expect in the south of France. Little bit like Catalan's performance this weekend. So we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be talking about the Elite One results from this weekend as well. So welcome back, Liam.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Right, Liam, so we dive into this week's results then. Another win for Albi, top of the table. How are the results from this weekend gone?
Yeah, so we're in this period of the year in the south of France. You mentioned the weather before. 9 out of 10 of the fields are complete bogs, honestly. So the games are getting a little bit slower. Most of them are a little bit lower scoring. I say most. But some of them are real slogfest. There's games getting, not just in Elite One, but there's games getting abandoned delayed, left, right, and centre because of pitch terrain and stuff like that. So, there's been a few interesting results. Like you said, Albi kind of reinforced their lead at the top. I guess the two most surprising results were that Avignon beat Sant Esteve Catalan, so that's the Catalan Dragons reserve on the road.
Yeah.
Now, for whatever reason, there's not a lot of away victories in French Rugby League. I don't know if it's psychological. I don't know if it's because the away travel is a lot more grueling than in the UK, because obviously France is a lot bigger country. I don't know what the reason is, but away victories are not that common. So Avignon, who are down the bottom of the table, or I think second last, got one over Sant Esteve Catalan. So that one probably surprised outside onlookers. I don't think it's necessarily as much of a surprise as people might think, because I think Avignon, I think I mentioned the last time, there's all sorts of off-field turmoil. They kind of lost their head coach after 2 games, and it's just been, it's been very difficult circumstances there. But they've still, I think, got one of the most physically imposing teams in the competition. And, when you play rugby league, that's half the battle. If you're not physically in it, you can't be in any games whatsoever. So they're physically in every game that they play.
Yeah.
And even, the games against Albi and Sant Esteve and the teams up the top of the table, they're always putting in, a very solid 40, 50 minutes where they're leading, and then it's just towards the back end of the games that they're letting it slip away. So it's not necessarily an enormous surprise, but it probably would have raised a few eyebrows for people who, are not too familiar with the situation. But they also put in a massive shift against Carcassonne earlier in the year as well. But speaking of Carcassonne, the other result is Limoux with a 1 point victory over Carcassonne, again an away victory, so 22-23, bit of a local derby, Carcassonne and Limoux. So those are probably the two most interesting results of the weekend.
Albi top of the table, Carcassonne and Catalan, they're just behind them, aren't they, with a game in hand? Are they due to play each other anytime soon?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd imagine there will be one game left between the two of them at some point. But yeah, it's interesting. I think Albi and Carcassonne are just hugely physically imposing teams. I think I mentioned last time we discussed this, the comps. It's a physically tough comp. So those two are like I said, physically imposing. They're aggressive. But then you've got Sant Esteve, obviously, I think their tagline is they're the Dragons du demain, the Dragons of tomorrow. So they're much more of a building for the future project.
Yeah.
So they've got a bit of a younger team, a little bit of a probably sacrificing a few kilos, to put it one way, compared to some of the other teams.
Yeah.
But this season they've just been much higher in quality than in previous seasons. Really well coached with Justin Murphy and Remy Casti, a couple of old Catalan Dragons players. So. Sorry, I don't mean old if they're listening to this, but I mean old as in a few years ago. But yeah, they're obviously doing a really good job in getting them kind of compensating for that lack of kilos, but just making up for it in quality. So yeah, it's an interesting matchup.
So obviously, looking at the table now, Albi just starting to creep away. Put you on the spot a little bit. Do you expect it to pretty much stay like that for the rest of the season, with Carcassonne and Sant Esteve Dragons sort of fighting it out a little bit, Limoux as well? Or do you think there's going to be an upset later in the season?
There'll undoubtedly be upsets. I will say that from what I've seen every team play now. I will say that Albi, Carcassonne and Sant Esteve do seem a little ahead of the pack, even compared to Limoux and Lesignan, and Pia. Actually, Pia are probably worth a mention in there as well. Got some Super League quality players like Hakim Maloudi. Albi, like I said, they get rolling forward from a big kind of imposing pack, but they've also got Tony Gigo, who looks, he could be playing in a dinner suit, like he's just able to just put kicks wherever he wants them. There isn't another kicker in the competition with the quality that he has, so it's just such a massive advantage on the other teams.
And they'll just go down to the bottom end of the table, a team that UK fans will be very familiar with. Toulouse's sort of B team, they're bottom of the table, aren't they?
That's right, yeah. I think they're also a very young team. When I saw them play, they're very young. They're physically a little bit behind some of the other teams. So I think that's just, they're just struggling with the physicality of the comp, really. I don't really know what the story is in terms of, if the idea is the same kind of setup as the Catalan Dragons reserve or not. I'm not really sure. I imagine it is, but obviously the budget is not going to be the same as the Catalan Dragons. But yeah, I think they're just physically quite. I mean this with the greatest of respect, but I think physically they're quite far behind some of the other teams. Younger players playing against guys who have late 20s, 30s, and even up to like approaching 40 who have been around the block a few times. So I think that's where they're just behind.
Brilliant. Praise of all of that, Liam. So just if we can just switch fire now to Catalan, that Catalan game against Hull FC, a result that I don't think anyone foresaw, really. I like the idea that Hull FC are back perhaps into winning ways and have picked up a win. But a complete shocker from Catalan, who look to recruit really well in the off-season.
Yeah, that's right. There's been a lot of anticipation, like among French fans, about some of the signings that they've made off-season. Obviously, Luke Keary's probably the most headline-grabbing one, kind of pulling him out of retirement. They would have had Sam Tompkins, but am I right in thinking he tore his hamstring in the Challenge Cup? Is that right?
Yeah.
So he's going to be gone for a while, and just having that, he's obviously not scoring 5 tries in a match like he was on his first season at Wigan, but I think his leadership is going to be something that they'll miss, obviously. I agree with you about Hull FC. I think that already looked like a completely different outfit. I don't think Hull FC comes close to winning that game last season. It's obviously just a much more resilient, a much more aggressive group as well. So obviously something's gone right there. Catalan, like on the one hand, I think it was still like a decent quality game, I thought. But they just, for whatever reason, some of the big signings didn't show up and they just didn't manage to score many points. I think the real danger here is if, like, they've kind of been in a bit of a rebuild for a couple of seasons now, and they're kind of victims of their own success a little bit. I know they didn't win the Super League, but obviously they went to back-to-back grand finals, and I think the French fans now are expecting to be in that fight every season. And you just see, like, if you look on some of the social media comments, any kind of lackluster performance, and they are like people are really going for new signings, going for the coach and stuff like that. So I just fear kind of how much temperatures are liable to raise if they don't start if they don't start stringing together quite a few W's, to be honest, and they're not in that fight right at the top of the table. I don't know if the fans are going to tolerate that. Yeah,
interesting. I think Steve McNamara is potentially going to be the first coach under fire in Super League this year.
It's just the pressure. I know,
from the fans. It's one game, isn't it? I see, it's too easy to swear.
It is one game, but it's like it is true that the fans are already, kind of throwing their toys out the pram a little bit, just judging by social media comments, which I know is not like the real world, but it's just a trend that you notice. There is an expectation now that the Dragons are like right in the top table, and obviously, Steve McNamara doesn't deserve to be like in the crosshairs of fans because he's taken this team from struggling to being like alongside Wigan, St Helens, and those sort of teams. So, but you can't expect when you've signed that many new players, you can't expect it to click into place immediately. So, yeah, they are still in a bit of a transitional phase, I think. But on the other hand, so are Hull FC, and they managed to make it work. So, they do need to make it work sooner rather than later.
What's going on in my mind there is our conversation was, these big players didn't perform very well, and then it's like, is Steve McNamara under scrutiny? It's like, it was the players. I know they're responsible for getting them fired up and the pre-match arousal and all that kind of stuff, but it just seems a bit crap, but definitely something to watch out for. Liam, if we just move on, so you've got a little, like my good friend Karl here, you've got a little trip coming up to the States as well in the next couple of weeks. How excited are you for that?
I am buzzing. It's been a very busy few weeks here, and I'm just looking forward to just doing nothing except for absorbing rugby league, which will be fantastic news for my missus, who couldn't care less about rugby league, but she's followed me over to Las Vegas to watch it again. So for 2 years running, I promised her we're going to go every year if we can afford it. So really looking forward to it. It was awesome last year. Like anyone who's listening who's like umming and ahhing about going, if it's possible to book it last minute, do it. If not, definitely go in the future, because it's a great experience. And last year, I honestly think there was probably 2,000 to 3,000 Brits there already.
Yeah.
Like Super League fans and stuff like that. So, I expect that to double easily. I don't know. Have they released any info about the number of ticket sales from the UK?
It was 5,000 last time I heard, but that was
it?
That was ages ago. So I imagine it's way higher now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Liam,
and that's probably like an official count as well, right? Like there's probably quite a few people who've bought tickets but don't count in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So just sort of quickly off the top of your head, what's your tips for anyone that's going out there for the first time? You know what I mean? And in terms of like food, eating, places to go, things to see, chapels to get married in, and that kind of thing.
The less said about the chapels to get married in, the better. But we, that is an option. That is an option that you can do. Some people I know have done it apparently. I think just look. I can't lie to you. The prices of stuff is insane. But it's an entertainment city. Just don't go there and complain about the price of the beer. That's what you signed up for. That's what you're going for.
Yeah.
I just think, look, there's just so much to do. I think, I went to Vegas maybe like a decade ago, and I didn't have much money. I was on a bit of a backpacking trip, and it was towards the end of the trip. I didn't have much money, and Vegas kind of struck me as a bit of like, oh, you could see how this place was like super popular and fancy in like the 60s or 70s, right? But it was, it was a little bit rusty. It was, the paint was peeling in a few different places and stuff like that. But since then, there's just been this enormous like investment, especially in sport, in the city. So look, there's like the UFC has its performance institute there. All the UFC events are there. There's obviously now there's an NFL team. There's tennis. There's Formula One. Like Formula One, is that right?
Yeah.
Or at least they were going.
Yeah.
They were going for Formula One. There's the Sphere. Like it just feels like. It doesn't feel like how it felt a decade ago. Like it feels like a new place with lots of...
Yeah, WrestleMania's there. WrestleMania's there after the NRL Vegas game, isn't it?
Well, there you go. Like it's getting all of these like headline events, and it's just it just feels like an awesome place to be. What I will say is like there is, if anyone who's staying in Resorts World, which is where a lot of the NRL stuff is based, there is like a little kind of hole-in-the-wall taco shop right behind Resorts World that doesn't look like anything at all, but you will probably have the best tacos of your entire life there. So that's my number one tip.
Brilliant.
Right. Rugby League Outsiders food rating incoming.
I've got plenty more. Invite me back for a whole other episode. We'll do that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's wrap it up there, Liam. Thanks again for your input on French Rugby League. We love to hear the kind of stories and what's going on over there. And I wish you all the safe travels in your run to Vegas, and hopefully you two will meet up and have a beer and a face to face.
Like I said, hopefully you can reap the rewards of the radiator in the studio. So yeah, we'll be enjoying Vegas. We'll be sitting by the pool.
Yeah.